Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Christmas Day, December 25th. And I said I probably wasn't going to stream, but then I ended kind of on a good note working on my server. And so I thought to myself, well, if I go any further, I'm just going to start a second part of that project and then I'll start banging my head against that for hours and then I'll probably end on a negative note at that point. So I thought to myself that now would be a good time to take a break. I've also managed to lie in bed for too long, and now my shoulder seems to have been sore, popped out of joint, or something like that. So that's fairly annoying and painful. Uh, for the accountability section, otherwise, we let's see, we don't have too much to really say at the moment. It seems like the internet might be having a bit of trouble, but it seems like it will fix itself. Um, I've uploaded some videos, but I need to get desperately into the back into the habit of scheduling videos, and I haven't played any other games since finishing the nonary game Virtue's Last Reward, which I think I am gonna pretty much have um, to kind of quickly jump into the third game of the Honor game series because that second game was so much of a middle chapter to a trilogy that if I don't jump into it fairly quickly, I will forget everything about it. But I think I will try to play something, whether it's like a Lego game or just a point and click adventure game. It wouldn't be terrible to play like Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis because I recently did record Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Clear Chapter 8's of Fate's trigger conclusion during the Treasure Trove of Rupees event. So we've got this single event going on here, where here we've got this we can reroll for more gold. I'm not planning on streaming too much for super long today, um, but I will try to get the daily quest done, or as much of the daily quest as possible. Seems like they are going to just hand us a new expansion pretty much with the new year. I picked out the games I want to buy. I'm still sitting on, as far as the Steam winter sale, I'm still sitting on the shopping cart. I said to myself I'd give myself a couple days to think about it. A decent collection when going through my wish list that has about 3,000 games on it. A decent collection of things that are just like 50 cents, where at that point it's just a such a nominal fee that uh, that it would be ridiculous not to buy the games for somebody who's trying to be a YouTube content creator. At least it does not make a lot of sense for people to spend 50 cents on a game they'd never play, and there's still plenty of games in my Steam library I haven't played, but not too many that I would never play. Um, so I think I've done a decent job there, and then I'm trying to balance that out with more $10 games or even $8 games. I feel like this winter sale in particular had a lot of discounts for that were better because I imagine people were just broke and everybody knew it. Uh, but also, since I know everybody's broke, I can't really recommend going on a deep purchase. This is also one of the Steam sales where you get trading cards, but more and more the trading cards are getting replaced with the point shop. Uh, they have expanded, as far as I can tell, the abilities to modify your profile page on Steam, which I don't think anybody uses that at all, anyways. Uh, but they've modified that in such a way that you you now can add shelves and content like that. Let's just go ahead and do this. So they've added a whole conclusion section here on the story, and I haven't covered any of the story because I've still been completely stuck on getting a victory on this final boss battle. Hope for tomorrow. Like these late tier challenges are for people who have been playing Shadowverse from the beginning, and it's kind of weird that they're adding so much. So I'm gonna see if I can just skip all of the story and all of the game, because I don't want to know any of the story yet. So we'll just skip that, and we'll see if there's actually any challenges on any of these, or if you can just skip everything. It feels to me like there's kind of this thought pattern that they'd come back and add more challenges later. The game I play called Destiny Child, the cell phone gacha game, also kind of has that feeling as they continuously add more difficult tiers of story modes. It feels like they at some point might just add more challenges, but maybe they won't. Maybe they just always slow down the amount of actual challenges and increase the amount of story. It's almost like you're getting backdoored in this case to a visual novel when you were playing a collectible card game. I think that might be the first time I've even seen any of the main characters in these last two chapters. So, yeah, we've got one challenge here, and I imagine there might be only 3 or 4 challenges in total. Of course, the problem here is this could be really, really hard, and they've got us playing as a different character, and the different characters we're playing against, and on top of that, they don't have any English voice acting yet, so that's an issue too. I got Guacamole, which is the remote desktop management servers, a lot more configured than I had in the past. Of course, and this is all I can really say as far as the accountability is, I'll keep a brief recap of working on my server. Like, a lot of that could fail because the database that they all use could fail. Although I'm not even sure Guacamole is using the same database as the other Docker sandbox containers. So do this, I guess. Suppose that's the right move. But Guacamole, unfortunately, does not support elliptical curve private keys, which then made me make new private keys, and it doesn't support using the VNC protocol, which is a software to connect to a desktop and see some remote desktop. It doesn't support that if you're encrypting it through the SSH, which is command line connections, basically. So that creates a situation where you're either going to have to use VNC, which is such an old technology, and at a certain point, a lot of these connective, assistive servers that I'm setting up are just incredibly old technologies that there needs to be one ring to rule them all, as it were, something to replace them with. And for VNC, that is the more Microsoft run remote desktop protocol, RDP. And I thought you couldn't really run an RDP server on Linux, but that very possibly could have just been that I didn't look into it enough and do enough research, which that could be true for almost any service anywhere, and I'm trying to get better at that. But yeah, so I took off the remote desktop protocol. No, I took off the VNC and replaced it with RDP, which worked fine. There are some features certainly in better compression and caching that RDP improves upon. So now I've got that set up, but RDP by default doesn't use encryption just because, and I think that's probably true for almost any server. So it's the extra work you have to put in, certainly, to harden your servers to say, oh no, I've got to provide a certificate and a key file so that this protocol server can encrypt things, or I've got to be aware that I'm running a completely unsecured server. And for that reason, then that means I need to make firewall rules for my secondary network attached server, which is supposed to just access, give hard drives to the main server and not really do anything else. I need to make a firewall, and I did. I made a firewall rule saying only the server itself can connect to the network attached storage, at least on the remote desktop protocol port. And that way, now everything has to go through the web server of Guacamole if you want to do any desktop thing. Now, at the moment, I'm still leaving SSH, which is the command line stuff, open, because that is using encryption keys and elliptical curve encryption, so that's secure. Honestly, after doing more research to it, it doesn't feel like there actually is a good way to make... it doesn't feel like there's a good way to make a... what am I trying to say here? Like, to make a Docker file that would be for an end user client computer, it seems to be all focused around deploying multiple copies of servers. So a lot of softwares are just not there. So I need to find a completely different solution to probably make it something like a Debian-based server that, honestly, it should probably just be a headless server in the sense that it doesn't have a graphical user interface installed at all, because it's doing so little. The only reason even my main server has a graphical user interface is just on the rare case that there's some GUI only program that I would want to use. But yeah, it's not something that's guaranteed to actually even happen. Okay. So yeah, I'm thinking I'll probably want to rebuild a whole new setup. But since the operating system has been pretty much abandoned, although the question is, do I go to Debian or do I go to the new software operating system that they're going to make as a replacement from CentOS, from the original creator of CentOS, which I think is called Rocky. Yeah, it's called Rocky OS. We'll give this one more try, and then we'll give up. I may have to just play a lot over off screen. My remote network monitoring of battery backup software still seems to not want to work, and it's definitely one of these cases where it's a configuration issue with the software itself, and it keeps giving the exact same error, and I keep just looking back at the computer when it gives me this error and going, what does that mean? And I keep trying to Google it, and I'm still not getting anywhere with that. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I did get WebTrees, which is a genealogy website server running. It's nice, but also very specialized. And inherently that is the thing about a lot of these web servers, is that they don't typically have to be that powerful, so they can be web servers. But you want them to have a team that is only focused on doing one thing and one thing well. Like Nextcloud is about the biggest server package I have installed, and it suffers immensely from the fact that it's got a lot of applications that it's not super focused on. A lot of applications that are made by third parties, and that's a good thing, yes, but it's also a weirdly bad thing, because it creates a scenario where there's just not as much polish on it, and particularly using a Docker container image to install Nextcloud is leaving the software like a generation behind. So like I went back and told it to install the stable branch, and the stable branch apparently is going to lose all support on the 1st of the year, so in a couple of days. And I'm like, oh well, am I gonna upgrade this again and potentially break Nextcloud, because Nextcloud broke, its database broke for some weird reason that is almost certainly my fault. But yeah, I'm slowly testing and whittling down things to figure out what I can get to work, what I want to work. Is it really worth that much? At a certain point, things like the SFTP server, which I abandoned, become just so much work for so little reward that it's that the experiment is best abandoned, so that I can just move on with my life. There is a software called Unison. I'm thinking about this, and I haven't made any steps to it yet. But Unison is a service that's like a two-way sync, and the thought there would be to have a have it set up so that if I could actually ever clone my server and have a backup server, then they could use a master server that would then use Unison to keep all the files that are being served in sync throughout it. Now, it's arguable you don't really need that, particularly if you're just using something like Nextcloud, because all of that is done internally within their own database and through a file locking service called what is it called? Redis? Yeah. But there are backups certainly, and you're not going to get that kind of functionality if you're just running a FTPS server or an SFTP server. You're not going to get that. Arguably, you could try to use something like Resilio Sync if you're copying the same files to multiple computers, but I don't think that there's a good solution for that either. Because you'd think maybe that could be used for like Windows updates would be the ideal thought, that every computer in a local area network that's running Windows would benefit from sharing the same Windows updates. But it just kind of doesn't work that way. Windows does have a way to do it in their own servers, but that's like mini features that are Windows only focused, not really worth it. I did also briefly think about, and I know I'm just rambling about computer nerd stuff here, trying to run virtual machines inside of Docker containers, which really is just automated deployment. That would be the reason I would do that. But if I was to go down that route, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of support to run something like VMware or VirtualBox, which are pretty much the only two softwares that you probably would want to try on Linux. And it gets really ridiculous, because what I was thinking I would do is I would just run virtual machines of like Windows 3.1 and DOS and like Windows 95, which, while that would be an interesting science experiment, it basically gives hope to people that shouldn't have hope, because the only reason, and this is probably a great reason why this has not been really done or really supported by anybody, is if you could run virtual machines through Docker setup, you could run a bunch of Windows 95 virtual machines and then have your crazy 30-year-old piece of software that you're still trying to use run, and then you would never have to upgrade to Windows 10 or move over to Linux. You'd never have to do the things that should be done in as far as industry standard practices for security and just for maintaining things. We are, I guess, going to constantly be on the back end of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when companies would have spent millions of dollars to pay somebody to make a program, and now they just literally won't ever stop using that program. When, all fairness, almost any program is easily replaceable. It's just a matter of, do they want to retrain people, and the answer is always no to that. And if you're not just doing an experiment and you're running virtual machines of Windows 95 and things like that, really, really old software that shouldn't ever even be allowed to connect to the internet, even in a Dockerized container, I don't know what you're really doing there. I don't know the point there. And certainly it would be slow. It's not going to be as fast as running like a Hyper-V style virtual machine directly on Linux. And it's definitely not going to be as fast as if you just bare metal installed Windows directly, if you can get it to even install and run. There kind of is no reason, like, except for personal taste reasons. Like, when you start talking about Windows 7, 8, or 10, like, there's no reason not to use Windows 10. It just falls apart, the whole concept. I think there's very, very little software that would work on Windows 7 and not work on 10. I don't know what we can do here. So I guess the best thing to do would be this. And then evolve this. And that. Is there anything else to really talk about? No, I'm thinking about another project. I'm always thinking about new projects, and there's a couple of projects in particular that have been abandoned over the past couple years, and that was probably for the best. But yeah, there's also a project that I was working on, and I can give a brief update on that, where I was making a device that was going to be like an e-ink screen that connected to people's calendars, and you put on conference room walls or at the door. Ideally, it was also going to be able to let people connect their phones via Bluetooth to it, so whenever they got close to the conference room, their phones would just be quiet, muted. It wouldn't actually play any of the audio out. It would just make the phone think it was connected to a speaker, which I thought was a cool feature, and I got pretty far with it. I was having trouble with the networking libraries of the ESP32 chip that it was using. They've since since basically putting that on the back burner, the pandemic has happened. People have stopped being in offices. The idea of having conferences and meetings is face to face is out the window, at least for the time being. So the market just completely disappeared for that being a project. And honestly, that was a shame, because that was a project I actually had some small hope to make a little website and actually sell for money, instead of just crazy projects that I do for my own personal entertainment. But the good news is there was also some issues with the e-ink screen I had. So almost certainly if I was to rebuild this, if I was going to continue on this project, I'd have to buy a new piece of hardware to start over with, to use more modern hardware, because they've discontinued the e-ink screens I was using, and it didn't have what they call partial refresh support. So it was really difficult to really slow to draw the images on the screen, which even with partial refresh support, it's still really slow. All e-ink screens will be. And the device just didn't have any buttons. So I was thinking of some really crazy things, like using the internal compass and a magnet on the back of it as a way of just getting an input to put it into an administrative mode. Things like that have somewhat been eliminated now that there's a new piece of hardware that Adafruit is working on that has like 4 buttons, has a bigger screen, ink screen, has partial refreshes, it has better libraries. So if I went back to that project, it would be probably a lot better for me, but I'm still not sure if I ever will. And then I have another project that I've been thinking about and haven't even started. Ideally, I'd like to see a new Raspberry Pi Zero model come out, and before I start working on that project. Plus, it's a little bit more hardware based than programming based. But I've given it some small thoughts to that. But more and more, as I'm mostly being stuck in bed, it's real easy to fantasize and think. It's a lot harder to spend the time and actually work on it. And certainly I'm not making any video game footage at that point if I do start more and more projects. But I think I might start one sometime next year. I did finish some projects, and so that's always nice. I typically don't remember or mention when I finish something. You know, you forget your successes and lament your failures, as it were. messed that up pretty badly.
You're not half bad yourself.
Alright, well, let's start covering video game news then.
I'll have you know.
Let's see.
This is no toy. I'll have
Yeah, I guess I'll have the ad blocker off on Steam since I haven't checked out, and hopefully it doesn't delete the cookie and make me pick all those games again, because if that was the case, that would be very annoying. Every countdown immediately after you play it. I'm gonna lose anyways, so I might as well just play. We have a game on Steam here called Cold Call, which looks like just one of these horror games with... I don't know why half these horror games have the joke horror characters in particular. That seems particularly odd. 99 cents. Nothing more needs to be said there. Obviously, not a lot of games will have come out over Christmas, and not a lot of them will be good. Let's see. This is all about spell boosting. What is this? All enemy followers? Yeah, followers. That's not that useful. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called A Strange World of Fantasy, which is looking like just an asset flip shooting game. $11.99, way overpriced. Yeah. I also, come to think of it, probably need to make a decision on my account to not show adult content at first. No, I think that'd just be an extra hassle. We did have what I thought was a brief issue there, but I don't know. Apparently it so far hasn't been an issue. Either nobody saw it, or I thought I saw something that wasn't there in the last stream. But yeah, we are still having a slight issue with Steam allowing people to put uncensored nudity, pornography. Yeah, it's just called pornography. That's the right term in this case. As screenshots for their game, and then they are just not really doing their due diligence there. Like, which is weird because even like the adult game store Nutaku does a decent job of not showing a ton of nudity on the screenshots, even when you expect you would see a lot more. I think in part that might be because there actually often isn't that much nudity in a lot of the games, which Nutaku, to my surprise, actually did update the game College Days, which I'm still playing. They've added some new content, and they've added a new costume that you could buy, and they're trying to get more sales. They didn't expand the landmass, so doing the new content will be relatively little, and I'll just be back to being at 100%. But I'm a little surprised that they even they even went that far, because it definitely was feeling like they had just abandoned the game College Days. There was just like nothing new coming out, and they were still announcing an event that had expired like 4 or 5 months ago. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Linevox, which just looks like it's a attempt at doing something like Tron Light Cycles with asset flips instead. The thing about Tron Light Cycles, though, is that it's not really a good game, or a concept for a game. It's just something that was cool because of we saw it on a movie for that time. But yeah, and I think arguably Tron had some nostalgia around it from people who didn't actually sit and watch the entirety of Tron, and people who have actually seen Tron probably have much less nostalgia for it.
You're not half bad yourself.
But I'm the living one.
Let's see. So yeah. Yeah. The feeling or the idea of speed in particular is a thought that Tron sold itself on. But speed in itself is not really what you want. You also want control. Yeah, let's try some pre-built decks. A lot of these look like they are the same pre-built decks as before, and they haven't rebuilt any of the pre-builts, but maybe they've just kept the names, which why you would do that, I have no idea. Next, we have a game on Steam called Percussive VR, which seems like it's just different bells. No drums? Do drums not count as percussive instruments? In a weird way, that this isn't uniquely different in that normally you don't have a you don't have a VR game that's not focused on drums for as far as percussive instruments go. And this almost seems like it could be educational. Certainly, like the steel drum here, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that the different spots meant different notes. I guess in general I probably knew that, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you certainly where the notes are. Once again, though, as far as any music program, this is like $29.99, which isn't incredibly expensive. You do have this danger that the practicing through this method would actually not help anything and only hurt, because you're not getting the calluses, the blisters, you're not getting the force feedback, you're not getting probably accurate audio feedback. Yeah, in theory, I can wield guns because I've played first-person shooters rather well. In practicality, if I was to pick up a gun and start trying to shoot things, I'd probably do incredibly terribly, because I've never embraced the weight of a gun, or the kickback of a gun, or just the loudness of guns firing. There was a story. I don't think we have I don't think we have anything to say about it really, but for a while there, a long while, many years ago, there was talk between the creators of the Myst game, Myst, MYST, to take one of the islands in, I believe, Disney World, so that would be Orlando, because there are several little islands in the converted swamp that they built Disney World on top of, that had some walking paths, and they wanted to do something with it, but they didn't really have enough room to turn it into like Splash Mountain or anything like that. Something where you could really have a lot of people cycle through things. And so there was some talks about it, but the general concept, I think, fell apart as how that would really connect to the rest of Disney World. What it would have been is basically a VIP person, and a small group of like 20 people would have been boated out to this island and be able to walk around and feel like they were in an island like Myst, solving puzzles. And then in the afternoon, the boat would come back and pick them up, and it could be no two people would have the same adventure, even if you had done it multiple times. I kind of feel like that that concept in itself could have been useful as a experimental location, where you could put experimental characters and animatronics and experimental elevators and things like that without having a ton of people test it. But I don't think they could figure out how Mickey Mouse would equate to Myst, because Myst is its own thing for sure. So yeah, it just kind of died. And in a lot of ways, if they were to make a live action Myst game, that would be interesting, but it probably wouldn't really blow people's socks off. Like, the thing about a game like Myst in particular is the fact that you can walk away and you can take a break, and those kinds of games can be incredibly frustrating, whereas I would not really want to be trapped on the island of Myst, and because I feel like I probably would take months to figure out all the puzzles, or maybe even take days to realize there are any puzzles. Attack twice per turn. Spell boost. Let's keep on playing. Next we have a game on Steam here called Yellow Space Hacker, which is tagged as a hacking puzzle stealth simulation game. To me it looks like it's kind of just an asset flip visual novel with a bunch of gibberish screens on the side. Like, if this really is supposed to be hacking, then these kind of menus make it look like you're hacking very old computers in this like space environment, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's $18.74, and it's apparently Mission Bikini, English and French, and that just does not look good enough. I guess it is worth pointing out, right now the wish list is at 2,942. I'm gonna get 33, so not making great progress there, as it were. But I wouldn't be too upset. Like, a lot of games on the wish list, I think by the time I play one game like of that style, I very well may not want to play anymore. One of the games I think that's in my shopping cart right now is Ni no Kuni Remastered. If I play Ni no Kuni Remastered, I wouldn't be surprised if I really wouldn't want to play anything more as far as JRPG games. Should have played Insight first. Wouldn't have changed anything. Next we have a game on Steam here that's just a bunch of Asian characters. It says it's an RPG word game dating sim. To me it looks like it is a collection of asset flip jokes. And I believe I've seen a game like this before where it's a dating sim with all these pixely characters that don't really make any sense. English is not supported for this. It's $2.39. Chinese and Japanese, so take your pick on who's cheaping out on that one. Alright. Draw 2 cards. Do that. Then draw that. Do that. Then do that. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. See if this works. Alright.
Be destroyed. But I'm the living one. Let the wind blow. But I'm the living one.
Still lose.
This ungrateful world will perish.
Wow, something invoked. Didn't matter. Didn't matter anyways. Well, let's see. Pre-built decks. We'll try Highborn Lady. Of course, playing into the pre-built decks, which are supposed to be the ones that you technically somehow should be able to succeed against these single-player missions, you then would have to be really familiar with those decks. Here we have a game on Steam called Yabai Mantis VR, which is an asset flip game where you're fighting a giant mantis. Which, honestly, a giant mantis as an enemy might work if that's what you wanted to do. Probably better than like the spiders in that Honey, I Shrunk the Kids game. And certainly we've seen plenty of spiders in many games where we've seen very few mantises. I think there's probably some room there to milk a lot of different arachnids, insectoids. What are mantises? I think they might be arachnids, but they might be their own category too. They don't have like 6 legs. Let's go back here. Now, they have like either 4 legs and 2 arms, which I would say that's it. That they're like grasshoppers or something. They're not 6 legs. They're not 8 legs, so they're definitely not spiders or arachnids. So I guess I'd have to look that up. Let's see. That. But yes, some of the lesser known, more weird insects are a great archetype to potentially make some games around. I think that would work. Some enemies around instead of fighting the same dragons and dinosaurs over and over again. There we go. Next we have a game on Steam here called Kagura's Dreamland, which looks to me like it's an asset flip, kind of weirdly animated game where like it feels anime, but then it has this very soft, like brush stroke feeling to it. You don't, I guess, ever get to really look from behind, from the front. And there's a decent, some polish here. I wouldn't say a decent amount as far as the UI, but it does kind of feel like you're just hacking and slashing. And I don't recognize this character Kagura, as if she was from some other game. So I'd have to kind of say this is probably a Chinese project that needs more work. English, Japanese, Chinese. It might be a Japanese project that needs more work to create a game that would be something like Onii-chanba or something along those lines. Let's see. And then what does this do? Do we want to attack? Probably should evolve something in attack. Yeah, I can't justify Kagura's Dreamland though. $7.19 is too much for what looks like a Pop Team Epic was the game, was the anime I was going to reference here. It does look somewhat like that. Okay. See. This guy could do like 5 damage. If I evolve them, so.
Draw your blade.
Now what do we want to do? Next we have a game on Steam here called Stan Lee's Verticus. Now Stan Lee is dead, so who's using his name at this point would be very questionable, and at a certain point Stan Lee can't copyright his own name because many people can have Stan Lee as his name. He kind of failed terribly to stylize or get a trademark on his own name when he was alive, which would have probably been really good if he had made a production company, something along the lines of Stan Lee Productions would have helped him quite a bit. I've never heard of Verticus, if there is some superhero by that name, but honestly this just looks like a dropper game where you're just jumping down and or maybe you're not really falling as much as you're just shooting forward. It's free to play with a whole bunch of in-app purchases from the looks of it. English only. Apparently this was originally released in 2012 on iOS, so maybe Stan Lee's name is legitimately being used here. At a certain point though, even in 2012, it was seemingly the case that Stan Lee was being used and abused by handlers around him. At least that was the rumors. definitely not a game though that looks good enough regardless of whether Stan Lee was involved or not. Honestly, I don't think Stan Lee was involved in much of a lot of things he got attributed to himself. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam here called Christmas Day, which seems to be a game where you run around the Christmas decorated room, which it's a little surprising that you can buy asset flips of Christmas decorations, considering how few games that are going to actually use them. But it probably is a great indication of how artists, in a lot of ways, doing 3D models and animations, probably just make what they want to make or what they think there isn't much competition for, as opposed to really doing a lot of market research and going, oh wait, actually there's not that many instances in which Christmas actually happens. A great example of this is in The Evil Within 2, you walk around your house in flashbacks a lot. And there really would have been no problem with those flashback sequences taking place around Christmas and having Christmas decorations, and then that giving a slight different feel to the whole story. But that didn't happen, and that wouldn't have happened because then the creators of The Evil Within 2 would have had to have paid for more models that they wouldn't have really been able to use in any other location. Unless you're going to really embrace Christmas and have like a whole Krampus horror character for one level in something like The Evil Within 2. It just does not make sense to go down that route. Anyways, Christmas Day here is $2.99, English only. Seemingly, it's nothing. It seems like you just walk around, and that's it. I don't think there's a... Yeah, it says it's not a game. It's just one room filled with festival comfort and warmth. So, this is the definition of an asset flip. You really can't argue against it. Can we make clay golems any other way? Let's keep on moving. I don't want to go super long. If we go only an hour and a half today, that'd be fine. Particularly since it's Friday. Also, here we have a game called Skinwalkers, which looks like it's a dark screenshot horror game. Yeah, there's nothing here. $2.99, English only. Let's see. Summon to... So do nothing at the moment.
Show me what you can do.
I'll swallow you whole.
You're not bad.
Oops. That was a mistake. Yeah. Once again, we're seeing an instance where if I don't pay attention, even when I'm playing just against the computer, the computer is going to manage to run circles around me. Moving on, Teriyuki Toriyama is leaving Sony Interactive Entertainment Japan studio. This is a producer on Demon Souls, Bloodborne, Soul Sacrifice, and more. That's a big deal. Like, that's not just somebody quitting, that's a Japanese person quitting their job, where they never do that, to the point, let me remind people who maybe don't remember this or haven't ever heard this, that the unions are usually so good in Japan that to get people to quit, instead of trying to fire them at all, they put them in busy work rooms where they do monotonous tasks. Like, they put like a senior employee in a room and just have them move pencils from one side to the other side until they either got so depressed that they would either kill themselves, which I think probably happens more often than they'd like to admit, or until they quit. And on top of the unions being strong enough so that basically nobody in Japan ever gets fired or quits, the Japanese toxic work culture, which is often not mentioned and overlooked, or often highlighted as a good thing, and those Japanese are so efficient. And they may be efficient, but they're also in a horrible toxic work culture that has caused their entire next generation to not be willing to even have kids. But yeah, that work culture does not have people leave. And while we have heard some stories of crazy artistic people leaving and going to start their own companies, like the guy that wears the moon mask and doesn't show his face, and some of the Death Stranding creator, after basically being fired from Konami. I don't even know if he was literally fired. Look at this guy, though. He does not strike me as a crazy artsy guy. He isn't a counterculture Japanese artsy person. This is a salary man through and through. If anything, the only thing I could say that may make him slightly stand out is that he might be, by Japanese standards, overweight. Let's see. Quote here is, "I will be leaving Sony Interactive Entertainment Worldwide Studios in Japan at the end of December. To all those users who have supported the Japan studios so far, thank you so much. I will continue to take on the challenge of creating new game IPs in my new company, and I ask for your continued support." So he's starting his own company. The bigger point here, the narrative that seems to be getting repeated, is that it seems to me like Sony Interactive Entertainment Japan, is more and more becoming nothing. It's falling apart at the seams. The bigger Sony Corporation of Japan that owns the movies and everything else seems to have kind of abandoned everything by letting the Sony California office run everything. And there's been a lot of stories there, not a lot of good ones either. A lot of although, in all fairness, if we're gonna just be really fair, I have to applaud the past couple of months where people are more interested in other things than the crazy SJW stuff. Like, we just have not heard any major cancel culture announcements that really felt like they mattered or that people were actually getting behind. Maybe I'm forgetting something here, but I really don't think there has been anything. The last thing was slight controversies around The Last of Us 2. But Cyberpunk kind of swallowed all the memories of that and its controversies. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of reasons why the video game overlap with cancel culture and SJW in this has perhaps been slightly degraded is for the fact that they may have finally gotten rid of a lot of the useless, like, failed journalists that were acting like they were video game journalists when they really just wanted to write articles about other things. So yeah, that's nice. We'll see what happens over the course of 2021. It would be prematurely hopeful, but I'm kind of thinking that we might be at the beginnings of a new era, or a return to an old era, perhaps, but it better described that way, as far as video game journalism goes. Do that. And then we can do that. We can put that on the field. And then we can do this. Hit that. And then we can just heal that again. Let's see. Moving on. Yeah. G4 may come back into play, and the likes of Giant Bomb and Kotaku and sites like that may fairly quickly disappear or fall into the wayside as far as my personal interest goes. Let's do that. Do I want to evolve this? I think I do. Moving on, we have a Gamatsu article here. Gunslinger Stratos game for console and PC to be announced shortly after the new year. Which, Gunslinger Stratos looks kind of weirdly animated. This character in particular stands off as just being like way too young of a character to be front and center, as it were. And then there's some characters that are way in the back. I don't know what Gunslinger Stratos really is as a game series, or if like there have been Gunslinger named games I've heard of, certainly, or no, maybe not. I've heard of Gunslinger Girl anime, but that's, I think, maybe the only Gunslinger thing I can even think of that has a Gunslinger in the title. Of course, this story here. You've earned the Treasure Trove of Rupees event by completing a Treasure Trove of Rupees. Award were automatically claimed. So where are we with the missions now? A private match, almost certainly not going to happen. We re-rolled into that, and then 2 ranked matches. So, if we do this, and skip and don't look at any of the story, would this just be a skip section 2? I guess it is. Seems like we've wrapped up the whole story. And it seems like very much that they are going to yeah, there's like one forest craft challenge here. Finally, we might as well do it. It seems like this episode of the story is going to do like they had done before, where the group gets split up, and I kind of wonder if that means the group is always just going to be split up. and then 4 people are potentially going to be in one land and 4 people will be in the other land, and that'll just be how it goes forever. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called VR Brewing Simulator, which this looks like big business brewing, whereas I think if you were going to simulate anything, you would probably want to start with home brewing before you start getting into like super expensive pieces of equipment and really technical work. This is $2.39. It doesn't look visually polished or very interesting as far as a game, if it was a game, which I guess it isn't really. I don't think there's a lot to enjoy there or learn there that's useful. Also, this runs back into that same problem of, do you really want to play a game that is just simulating somebody's job? Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Hell Loop, which looks like a Lemmings game almost. A Lemmings game tower defense, where you place traps and try and kill the lemmings. That is an interesting question. Is do you want to create lemmings games where you try to keep the lemmings alive, or is it more fun to create lemmings games where you kill the lemmings? $2.69, English only. There's not a lot here to offer, and that price is a little high to start with, but if it was on sale and it was like 50 cents, there might be enough of a joke here to actually be interested. So I'm going to be generous and put it on the follow list. It's probably a mistake, but I'm willing to go that direction. This guy has only 15 health. Does that mean he's got some kind of ridiculous strategy? I think he may. Double Fine is apparently giving out some of their rewards for Fig backers, which it's worth mentioning that Double Fine at least at one point was sitting on the board of Fig. I don't know if now that Double Fine is owned by Microsoft, if that's still the case, where the person who was the boss of Double Fine and now is the boss of Double Fine that is now owned by Microsoft is still sitting on the board of Fig. But it is also worth mentioning, I think, that if they're just seems they sent out a survey so folks can reconfirm their names as to how they want it to appear in the game credits. So it's not actually even in physical things, which really just goes to show how long it has been since that game was announced and how slow it's been for that game to actually come out. It's still not out. It's definitely in development hell, as it were. But also you can see it's pretty slow news day. Next we have a game on Steam here called Angry Emoji, the game, which I don't think anything more needs to be said than that. It's clearly a cell phone game. It's clearly a garbage game. They want $4.01, which is about $2 over being expensive even. They've put out a patch so hoarding items previously could corrupt Cyberpunk 2077. Apparently there was some kind of lack of sanity check would be what I would describe it as. Where at 8 megabytes the save files would just completely corrupt your game, and there was no recourse or way to avoid it. You could often, if you don't play every single bit of Cyberpunk 27, you probably wouldn't have an 8 megabyte save file, but if you did try to play as a completionist, you were opening yourself up to that danger. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Attack. But yeah, they fixed that. It probably wasn't a particularly difficult thing to do, anyways. 36912 would kill that. Otherwise, this would do that. So. What does this card do, actually? This guy seems to be just straight up gambling. So he's got like 10. Alright. Let's do this. And then that. And put that on the field. Then just in the turn. It's worth mentioning that it's the roulette vampire. Yeah. Let's see. 5 damage. And then evolve. And then the attack there. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Understanding the Game, which just looks like a dark screenshot horror game. Free to play. English, Spanish, Latin America, Spanish, Spain. Let's see.
May the forest be at peace.
Leave this to me, fairy friends.
Okay.
Fairies, don't push yourselves too hard. Help me, fairies.
This. And
I'll
then
take care of them.
this.
Master.
Put that on the field. Then we'll just attack here. Then the turn. Yeah, I was trying to say Gearbox had put out some codes for the varied different versions of Borderlands, which, yeah, it's nice they're still doing that. Yeah, I'm getting wrecked. Might as well just not play. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Fortification Tower Defense, which, yep, Doesn't look like there's anything here. $2.99, English only. Let's see. Do we have any other? I mean, we could try this, I suppose. But I'm really assuming a lot there that any of my pre-built decks are good enough to win here. This may just be another character that does such a ridiculous strategy that you're not likely to win anyways, even though he has 15 health. Next we have a game on Steam here called Russiaphobia, which is clearly just a troll joke game, as we can look through here. 59 cents. Once again, these are the kind of games that I don't feel like should be allowed on Steam. Like, I don't think troll games and joke games serve the marketplace really. Same is true, I feel like, for something like this, where it's Save Christmas, where this is just yet another anime waifu asset flip game, this time in a Santa Claus outfit for 89 cents. Again, it just feels like money laundering more than actual business. I would probably not want to meet the person that actually enjoyed buying and playing these kind of troll joke games. There probably are some YouTubers out there that build their entire channels around playing this kind of garbage, and I don't feel like that's really what I want to see.
Let's play. Let's play. Help me, fairy.
See, this guy just has like some kind of ability on him, and it doesn't seem like it has really to do with any card he actually played. Let's go and do that.
Hey, let's play.
Let's go ahead and evolve this. Do that.
Help me,
Do
fairy.
that. Next we have a game on Steam called Nodrion Fall of the Empire, which looks like it's just a kind of unpolished fantasy game, Skyrim clone. I feel like if you're going to make a game that looks so much like Skyrim, it's got to look at least as good as Skyrim does, which is a high bar certainly, but I think it is the true bar. $9.99 in the English, Russian, German, and Ukrainian game. Definitely just does not look polished enough. Alright, well, if we do this, and then we do this, and then we do nothing more, I think that might be the best move.
Why would the dead need a living wage to see?
Let's see. Next we have a Gamatsu article here. Granzella teases a Disaster Report 5 already being in development. Which, okay. Although at a certain point, I don't know how many more Disaster Report type games you can make before people are tired of hearing tired of the Disaster Report series. Let's see, put a fairy, put 2 fairies. Allied amulets in play. That worked. Libretro put out a video. Libretro's YouTube channel got to like 2 million, but they're still mostly putting out videos that are just in silence. So they feel weird, to say the least. But they put out a video where they talked about save states. I haven't watched it, but was gonna take a moment to watch it later. Let's see. Komatsu has an article. Hamidashi Creative Console. Hamidashi Creative console versions, console versions confirmed for PS4 and Switch. This looks like a romance visual novel by the looks of it. So they're going back a generation. Look at that. Lucked out there. That also is very possibly a game that isn't going to have any versions outside of Japan. I wouldn't really be surprised if we are in a case where the Japanese game developers start to fall a little bit further behind and make Switch versions only or PlayStation 4 versions only as they try to slowly learn how to program on either the Xbox or PC, which could be the next big thing, certainly. I feel like having just skipped all of this story and completed it all, I think that was actually very nice and easy, which gives me some thought to come back and try these, but I won't do that at the moment. It kind of feels like that we might be going full circle, and we might literally have jumped into the past of the Guild War, the beginning of the Guild War, which is to say almost all of the chapters, 11 out of, well, no, I guess 8 out of 11 chapters would all be this circular logic, which might make some sense. They kind of need to wrap up that arc, though, and get back to this. But they are doing the very Japanese thing in which they introduce a big bad guy, and then they forget about that big bad guy for a very long time, and then they maybe come back to it at the very, very end. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Revenge on the Streets, which looks like I would say, poorly artistically designed beat 'em up game. Like, this thumbnail does not look great, but for lack of a better description, chibi, small stature characters just don't look like the right kind of characters you'd expect from a beat 'em up, and the backgrounds certainly don't look amazing either. You're also probably way too zoomed out for this size of characters. Not that you should zoom the camera in more, but instead you should have made the characters bigger. This is $2.54, and it's being compared to Cuphead, and it's English only. Yeah, and it just does not look great at all. So that's going to be a no for me. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Trajectory Fracture, which seems like a VR game where you're bouncing off arrows to hit buttons, which that's an interesting thought. The question you'd want to ask, and certainly, is, are the arrows affected by gravity or wind resistance, or do they just directly bounce like lasers? And if they do directly bounce like lasers, is this just a very ugly version of something that you might expect to see in Portal 2? Because a lot of these, like light bridges and laser walls, are things you would have seen in games like Portal 2 and certainly other games. I feel like a game like this in particular could have been a Portal 2 mod and looked a lot better. $8.99, English only. Yeah, and you were bouncing lasers in Portal 2, so it's not a big difference there, except for the VR element. Maybe that would be the next thing, is to have a laser on your gun, on your portal gun, that you have to bounce around. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Death Valley, which just looks like an awful asset flip first-person shooter. Textures here look like they are from a early 90s game, or well, I honestly probably closer to a mid-90s game. And then there's just like no real background or enemies or anything being shown here. They're labeling it as a simple game for $12.99. That is definitely not a simple price for a simple game. Next, we have a game on Steam here called the Interstellar Annihilation Project, which looks like it's a first-person shooter set on Mars for no reason with a sniper rifle. It may just be a little game at the moment, but he's getting stronger. Yeah, I don't believe that. Early access, $10.39 English only. We have seen this year, and if that's another thing to be happy about this year, is that we've seen a decrease in games just blatantly labeling themselves as early access when there's not really a good justification for that. It doesn't make a lot of sense to make a slide puzzle game or like a Sudoku puzzle game and then put it in early access, because that just means you're never bothering to finish it. Even the first-person shooter, like single A or double A games that put themselves in early access, have terrible records as far as actually finishing the projects. I feel like what we're seeing here is a collection of people trying to slide games onto the Steam storefront when nobody's looking, and then they can say they sold the game on Steam as if that really even matters. Let's see. Go ahead and play that. And that. Next, we have a game on Steam here called City Guardian, and this one has Asian letters on it, so this may be a Chinese asset flip, maybe not. $11.99 English only, so why have Asian letters when this doesn't even really look like an Asian game? I feel like all three of those games may have been developed and published by the same developer, but I'm not willing to even waste my time to go back and check. Let's see.
Let's go to the ends of the earth.
Attack here, here, and here. End the turn. Gamatsu has an article here. ReZero starting life in another world. The Prophecy of the Throne overview trailers is now available. It's due out January. The game is due out January 2021. One of the things that my modifications still don't really manage to accomplish is when things are hard broken like this, or they just don't have a hard break in them. Like it would have made a lot of sense to put a new line here and make the second line in almost every scenario. There's very few people that are going to have super long monitors where a full sentence all the way around. At a certain point too, I guess, if you have like a 4K or 8K monitor, I don't know if you really want your eyes to take one sentence from the top left side of that monitor all the way to the top right side of the monitor, assuming you're reading left to right, because that would be a lot of neck movement. Let's see. gonna lose here. But most of the other things, most of the other things that uBlock Origin has allowed me to do as far as editorializing and re-editing people's websites and articles have been massively successful. And I did it to IGN, and IGN in particular is a website that has almost a third of the right side of the screen dedicated to ads. So there's just no way to get the actual content to center well.
What's that for? What's that for? Strong.
Let's see what the missions are. I didn't even know what it was. Just 2 ranked wins? Well, then I guess we have to battle again. We'll just kind of go through everything. Gamento has an article here. Galgun Returns for Xbox One has been cancelled. Inti Creates is, quote, unable to ensure consistency on Xbox, which Xbox One is not the Xbox Series, so unless they never announced Galgun Returns for the Xbox Series, this might be coded language for saying, oh, they won't let us do the upskirt shots, which I wouldn't be surprised. Microsoft has not yet shown any signs that they were not willing to have lewd upskirt anime girl upskirt shot games, but I wouldn't be surprised. Of course, that would smack in the face of what Microsoft has been trying to do. They've been desperately trying to get a foot in the door in Japan. They've been talking about maybe buying a Japanese company. So I don't know how they think they're going to be successful if they did buy a Japanese company or try to do more business in Japan, and then they pulled a bunch of SJW stuff that the Japanese won't ever like or accept. Like, let's just be honest. 60-70% of Japanese games that are bought and sold are this. It's anime characters. It's that style. It's a lot of it's lewd stuff. A lot of it has upskirt panty shots. That's what it is. So apparently they are saying that Galgun Returns is a remaster of the original game, which I guess is a good thing to know, so I don't accidentally buy the original game. Let's see, the quote here is, while development of the Xbox version was complete and the master ROM under review, it became apparent after productive discussion with Microsoft that we would be unable to ensure consistency of experience across all platforms. As a result, we've decided to refocus attention to Nintendo Switch and PC for the upcoming release of Galgun Returns. So yeah, this strikes me as they literally said that they weren't going to let some element there. And so it may very well not have been just the entirety of the game. It may very well have been just one small section of the game that would have been different on the Xbox One. And there's plenty of people that complain about that when there is a slight censorship or change there. So I'm not surprised one bit that they would I wouldn't be surprised if we start to hear some more stories like this, although maybe not. Yeah, I'm personally still a little hyped around a re-release of Galgun. Hopefully a more reasonably priced release of Galgun. I wouldn't be surprised though if it actually is terribly overpriced too. So that is another consideration, is that if it comes out, it may be so overpriced that it might make more sense to buy the original game. Although that is a weird way to go, certainly. Anyways, let's hurry up. Here we have a game on Steam called Vaccine 19, which looks like it's a cell phone game being sold on Steam, and a terrible low effort cell phone game. It's free, English only. Well, I guess that's weird. It's early access. It doesn't have any in-app purchases. It's free. It has 17 achievements. It's all over the place. I don't know what the monetization here would be. The developer is going by cool names. I feel like they probably are just trying to establish themselves as a company to then sell something later. That would be my only thought. Next, we have a game on Steam called Mum Masters, which that's certainly an interesting depiction of mummies. But I suppose, actually, I'm a little surprised there aren't more depictions of mummies that way. It's a tower defense game with some traps. It's got a little bit of a different twist here, but I think you have to be fairly careful not to get overly sold on this one character screen, which may not play a big role at all. But remember, this is still a tower defense game. It's 84 cents, English and Russian. I think I'm gonna be overly generous and put this on the fall list, but honestly, it should not leave the fall list and make it to the wish list. It should leave the fall list and never be mentioned again. I guess that Tom Cruise Mummy reboot really did ruin the potential female mummy trope, if that was ever going to be a thing. There was a female Egyptian in the Brendan Fraser mummy movies, but she too wasn't actually a mummy, or she wasn't ever depicted as a mummy. They brought her back to life and fully made her look human immediately, where they could have probably waited a while to do that. Right. Everything gets +1/+1.
Oh, no, you don't.
That. Do that. And then do that. And that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Fast Cubes, which looks like it's just a box pushing moving game. Looks not that interesting. $1.79 English only. That's way too expensive. They're comparing this to Fez and Pac-Man DX. Man, all I want for Christmas this year is for Steam's recommendation algorithm to get a lot better. Either recommend random things that have about the same amount of sales, and have the same tags, or at least trying to recommend the right things, instead of things that share one tag at most and have just oversold, sold in the millions. Because yeah, the recommendation algorithm right now is a lot like the YouTube recommendation algorithm, where it's just pushing people to the top tier games, which a lot of it doesn't even make sense because they're games I think I already own. Here we have a game on Steam called Stop the War, which maybe means Stop the Drug War. It looks like it's a asset flip first person shooter. Nothing interesting there. Yeah, I own this game, so why mention this? These are similar to games you've played. I guess that's the case. So maybe what they need to do is move some things around and do a rebuild anyways, and put the more like this algorithm higher, particularly since, but the more like this is in particular the ones that need to be improved. This game does not look anything like 60 seconds in Titan Souls. So that's a problem. And there's no way to fix it, right? Like, there's no button here to say, is this a good recommendation for this game? Is this game similar to this? It doesn't ask, it just says it is. And it's wrong.
Don't underestimate me.
Like, I kind of wish YouTube had the ability where you could say, you just recommended me this video from this other video, and you're totally wrong. These two videos are completely different. I don't think you should do that. That's the kind of feedback that if they'd listen to might be very, very useful. Moving on, we have a game that's all Asian characters. It looks like it's a visual novel, possibly a Chinese visual novel, in the sense that I'm not seeing a lot of backgrounds, nor am I seeing a lot of different characters. 2, maybe 3 characters in total. English is not supported, 79 cents, that's too cheap. Chinese, yeah, probably a pretty short novel. Not bad animation on the characters though. Like, this is probably the largest image I've ever seen. It says it has 50,000 words. I question what the quality of those words would be, certainly. Having such a large image on the description though also opens up a door to potentially having a new generation of descriptions on video games where it just goes on and on forever. Although I guess that doesn't really matter because it comes by default collapsed, and tons of video games are listed on Steam with almost no descriptions at all. Do we want to do this? Yes. Next we have a game on Steam here called Tombow Survivor, which just seems like it is just a asset flip thing. It looks a little bit more polished. Looks like there might have been a concept here for, I can't even really call it a cell phone game. I don't know what the market for something like this really would have been. English is not supported, $4.99, Spanish Latin America. Yeah, I don't know who wants this kind of art style. Like, if this was like a flash game on a flashlight, that's the closest I feel like this art style matches with. But there's polish here, it seems. And I don't know what Tombow means, but I suspect it's something close to riots or hard times or something along that line.
Maybe, just maybe, this magic will help.
Let's see. We have Kids Memory Game 2, which I feel like Kids Memory Game 1 came out just a few days ago. 59 cents, English only. Obviously, I'm not going to put that on the fall list. Next, we have a game called Killer Tank, which looks pretty awful. $1.99 English only. Yeah, we're not going to see any standout great games today, almost certainly. Here we have a one called Magic Emperor 1, which looks like a Chinese game if I ever saw one. I like this art style though. Like, I don't just inherently hate all Chinese games. Like, this is a nice art style. If you could get a decent visual novel and translate it to English and it looked like this, I might consider playing it. Or if you don't make it a visual novel, that might help a lot too. This is tagged as an otome, as in young maiden story. Doesn't look terrible. This kind of soft palette style, almost like a painting, is not used in video games very often anyway, so you can make a lot of games like that. $3.99, not terrible, but English is not supported, so yeah, that becomes a problem.
No matter what, I'll shine.
See, every time I click on an article now, I'm getting into these new categories that are covering up the entire screen, so this is a slight problem. Next, we have a game on Steam here called IU the Dream Soul.
All I wanted was to be beautiful.
This feels like it's trying to be something like Yumi Nikki, but nah, I wouldn't give it the time of day. $4.99 English only. Take that.
You'll get cavities.
Maybe should have curated some of these games. Here we have a top-down twin-stick shooter game called Iblis. That's $2.39 in English only. You know, honestly, if I hid some of this information,
How did I lose?
then I could get the price a little bit higher, or the language up to the same height as the price. But this information's the important information. I wish there was a way to drag and drop things. That would be the next step, is to have fully customizable websites where you could just drag and drop things the way you want them. But then you need like a lock button somewhere so that you don't accidentally drag and drop things. There's a way you could do something like that. It'd probably not make your website run particularly well, but customization is key. Particularly if you're trying to get people to go through hundreds of pages on your storefront, which is, I guess, your initial goal. Here we have a game on Steam called Aggressive Robot Vacuum, which looks like a low-effort Russian game. $1.79 English, Russian, nothing really to say there. Next, we have a game on Steam called Omori, which is rated very positive with 111 reviews. So how did it get the reviews? I guess it was early access and it's coming out of early access now. $19.99 and you got 111 people to really play it. English only. It definitely has a different art style and it's simplistic and none of the images want to load. Still having some slight problems with that. I feel like there's a chance that this developer made something else, but it's not showing that on Steam. I feel like I've seen this art style, this pencil art style, which that's really what it looks like. Someone drawing with a pencil. Alright, well, I cannot just immediately reject something here. It's not an RPG Maker game, even though it looks like it's an RPG. It's not. It's unique in its look. So I'm going to give it a follow. And we'll have to do more investigation later as to why that game exists in that. And looks like that. Or what part of that game is interesting to me. Next we have a game on Steam called Set for Battle, which just looks like a asset flip real-time strategy game. You don't see too many of those. $4.99 English and Chinese. They don't do that. Do that.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Welcome home.
Get back
Check
here.
here. Check here. Next we have a game called Map Game or something, which talk about a low effort title. And yeah, it looks like it's nothing. $2.99 English only. It would have been really cool if somebody did sneak out an amazingly great game on Christmas with no advertisement, but I don't know why you would do that. Like, I don't even know why somebody would sneak out a mediocre game on Christmas without advertisement. It just seems like that would be a dumb thing to do.
Really fly now. Cutting across.
This.
Welcome home.
This. Next, we have a game on Steam called Life of a Yandere Simp, which I guess at this point you're playing as the guy, which this does inherently point out that the word simp, the insult, has yet to be banned on Steam. This feels like this is probably just a joke or troll on Yandere Simulator, but in a weird way this might be have as many features, if not more, than Yandere Simulator, or be more complete than Yandere Simulator. Let's see, English full audio. Is there any reason to really put this on the follow list now? I don't feel like it. I don't feel like there's a reason. Even if Yandere Simulator itself came out on Steam, I don't know if there's really a reason there that I would want to go through that effort and wishlist it or play it. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Cosmic Break Universal launches in early access on January 20th, 2021. Early access period to last 3 to 5 weeks. I don't know what game this is, though. It's got a video, and we can see there's a lot of cleavage there. There's your Merry Christmas, I suppose. I can see the beginning of the end too, so we'll wrap up basically at the same time we normally wrap up. Yeah, looking at this game, it seems like you just are a player versus player in mechs, and the anime girls are just false advertising, for lack of a better term. Yep, it's just terrible graphics. So yeah, I'm not interested in Cosmic Break Universal. Deal 5 damage to enemy leader. Or deal 5 damage to all enemies.
There's a lot more where that came from.
Hellstorm.
There we go.
I know when I've lost.
Next, we have a game on Steam called No Man is an Island, which looks like it is a survival game with a lot of videos. A lot of videos. 1 second.
Wings of light, show your might.
I am feared and respected.
Sorry about that. Thought I heard something. Drafty houses and such. Storm, summon a dragon. Evolve, summon a dragon. Ouroboros, deal 3 damage to an enemy. Store 3 damage. I want to play one of these. So I think you do this.
Free my darlings.
And then go ahead and evolve this.
Ready to witness my true strength?
If I had evolved that, I would have summoned a different dragon. No Man is an Island. Back to this. Survival horror game. Looks not special. Early access for $14.99. English and Chinese. See, next we have a game on Steam called Heartworld, which seems like that video's not loading. Looks like it's a blurry mess for whatever it is. Almost half of the screenshots are blurry. That's weird. And the gameplay's not making that make any more sense either. Yeah, this almost feels like a VR game. 69 cents. Chinese only, not VR, just the camera is really, really far ahead, so you can't see anything, and you're running around hacking and slashing polygons. Yeah, it's just nothing there. Okay. 3 damage to an enemy.
Bluest water. Darkness on this plane.
Yeah, Heartworld, since English is not supported, is easily dismissed, but looks pretty bad anyways. Let's see, Gamatsu has an article here, Lover Pretend debut trailer. This young maiden otome visual novel is due out March 25th. I guess we might see more of these as things go on. Is it really necessary to watch each of these trailers, particularly for a visual novel? That was a good question. I don't think I'm going to get 3 victories today either. And I don't see any way I'm going to get a private victory. Like, I can leave the game on a private match and walk away, but nobody would have the number. I doubt too many people are even playing. This would be a great time to not allow for private matches, is around the Christmas holiday, or at least on Christmas Day. You know, it wouldn't really hurt for a lot of these games to just pretty much not do anything on, don't do anything special, but don't also shut down on Christmas Day. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that need some form of an escape, particularly during holidays, depending on how well behaved or awful their family members are. And certainly there could be people with brand new computers that are just hyped to play Shadowverse, so it'd be crazy to shut down the servers completely. But you shouldn't also encourage people to check out of holidays, since society deems holidays to be important days. Says the person who's streaming on Christmas. So there's definitely some hypocrisy there. Although, in all fairness, I am planning on wrapping up fairly soon here and doing a little bit of celebrating myself. Next we have a game that's all Asian characters, and it seems like it's a visual novel, if I was to guess, set in an insane asylum or rehab from the video I saw. English is not supported, $3.99, Chinese only. Yeah, you've got like all these people sitting at this table, and they could just be medically recuperating, certainly. But I don't know. There's a lot of people that get killed from the looks of it in the story.
Wanna know how you're gonna die?
This is what love looks like.
If anything, the stripes kind of almost feel like they're prisoners in some weird Chinese like low security prison. I'm not sure if that's the mood they're going for, but stripes do tend to imply prisoners more than patients. Moving on, we have a Switch game here, Buddy Mission Bond overview trailer coming out for the Switch January 29th in Japan, which is obviously another visual novel if I was to guess. Although I guess it's not tagged as a visual novel. Yeah, I'd be really surprised if it wasn't though. Yeah, one of the things about Virtue's Last Reward that kind of irritated me is that, well, it had voice acting for every character except for the main character, which was weird and made for problems. Yeah, I'm not sure this really is just a visual novel or if there's more game here. The lip flaps for the characters were very wrong in English because they were the lip flaps that would have been in line with the people speaking the Japanese lines of dialogues. And there's just not a great way in Virtue's Last Reward to jump between the English and Japanese, where it feels like something like the back button on a controller would be the perfect button to say, hey, as the game goes, if you want to switch to the Japanese dialogue and hear the vocal inflections of those voice actors who are almost certainly better than the English translator voice actors, you can do that. But no, in Virtue's Last Reward, you have to jump all the way to the main menu, and I was just never really that enthusiastic of taking that extra bit of time, particularly knowing that Virtue's Last Reward took forever anyways as a game, and pathetically, unlike the previous, I should have attacked first. That was a mistake. Like, Virtue's Last Reward ended on basically a cliffhanger where at least 999 bothered to wrap up the whole story. I definitely was not expecting that. Here we do have one Tech Raptor article, but pretty much we can tell there's not many people writing articles this week. CD Projekt Red is facing a lawsuit over its Cyberpunk 2077 release. Investors are seeking damages over false and misleading statements. So even though the game relatively sold very well, the investors are going to try to exact their as much money out of the company as possible. And in a funny way, this might be the end of CD Projekt Red instead of the beginning of something new, because they just flew too close to the sun, potentially. Of course, it could also go nowhere, and it could be a lawsuit that's just tied up in the courts forever. Next, we have a game on Steam called Ursa, as in like Ursa Major, one of the constellations, maybe? It kind of looks like a Minecraft world without really anywhere as much as the stuff you can do in Minecraft. Seems like it's just platforming, pretty much. A world with this art style that had all the abilities of Minecraft would be interesting, but at a certain point you would just be skinning Minecraft. I don't think you can actually compete with Minecraft these days because they've just got too popular of a group of too much of a player base already. So yeah, I don't think there's a way to save that. And the Ursa itself is $3.99 in English only. I don't see anything interesting enough to put that on the fall list. Next, we have a game on Steam called Omega Blade, which is seemingly a VR game where you're shooting guns. So I guess guns are the Omega Blade sniper rifles. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It didn't make a lot of sense at all. This is $14.99. It's a VR game, English only. No way that's making it to the fall list. We'll try Bloodcraft, and that'll probably be our last game for today. See, next we have a game on Steam called Lathoris Bacon Ale and Repeat, which just looks like an RPG game. While it does have slightly different art style than just your standard RPG Maker game, I don't know if I
Time to get started.
buy into being something else.
Come on.
They call it a humorous RPG adventure in full 2D. 764 with a third-party EULA, which we haven't seen a lot of those in a while, or I haven't mentioned a lot of those in a while. English full on you. I'm gonna give this a chance, but almost certainly it's. It feels like it's a Zelda game where you're playing as the bad guy from Zelda 1. But yeah, I don't know if that's really what they're going for, or if that just happens to be what I'm taking it as. Next we have a game called Think Underscore, which seems like a low effort game. $3.99 English only. Got a victory there.
I did it. I won.
Take those win streak bonuses when we can get them. See, one more victory would get us the temporary gems. See. Next we have a game on Steam here called Orange Cast Prologue. Now this looks like a demo of some actual game. Now why would you release your demo for an actual game on Christmas Day? Like, there's really no financial reason why you would feel that you are required to release a demo of a game before the beginning of the year. Unless you have some like contractual obligation and you're trying to tank your own game. This looks good. This looks rather polished. I don't understand why you wouldn't have had more of an announcement for a game like this, or at least announcement for the game that's coming out with the demo. Team Merez, I don't think I have heard of. They apparently are releasing Orange Cast in January 21st, 2021. That's weird. You know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here to the real game and I'm going to put that on the follow list. And the demo, not sure about. Now this other game, 41 Hours, might indicate that this is actually not that good of a game and it just looks really good. I can't really assume that to be the case. There's just too much consistency and polish here. This is a Russian game first and foremost by the language settings. And a lot of the artwork looks like it is borrowed from, not stolen artwork, but concepts certainly seem to be borrowed from things like Dead Space. But if you're going to steal from a good game like Dead Space, by all means. There hardly are a glut of Dead Space style armors out there. See, next we have a game called Urban Street Fighter, which it probably would be unfair for Steam to say you can't have Street Fighter in the name of your game, but you probably should look at games that have Street Fighter in their names a little bit closer than this. Clearly this is just a low effort asset flip fighting game. $3.99 English only. And making a low effort fighting game is not even particularly as low effort as you could go. So it's probably doubly stupid. Next we have a game on Steam called The Dark Stairs Back, which seems like it's some kind of horror game, but it really feels like it's just a low effort asset flip horror game. $2.54. See, next we have a game on Steam called One Last Dungeon, which I certainly know that feeling of just wanting to keep on playing games. This looks like a card game if the artwork will load. A roguelike based on card gameplay might be interesting. Might also not be interesting. So, yeah. Seems like you use the cards as characters, and sometimes they're 3D models and sometimes they're just cards, and that seems doubly repetitive. This might be a deck builder game that just won't have that much that many cards in the first place, but there's something here that I want to at least give a follow to. $7.99. We'll give it a follow. This easily could be reviewed fairly low. It could also be fairly boring. It may not have the repeatability that you would expect or want. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called I Want to Fly, which looks like a visual novel. Although a lot of people in these screenshots, like no cases where there's just one person on the screen. The animation's not amazingly great, but it's free. And it's English only, so check it out if you want to. I feel like particularly if you're a Western game developer and you want to make a visual novel, this probably is the way to do it. You're not trying to really compete on price. You're almost certainly not trying to compete on length or story quality or duration. You're not going crazy from the anime art style in a different direction. You're staying in line with what an average visual novel looks like. You're putting your own artistic twist on it, or perhaps you would better phrase this as your own inability to consistently draw in it. But yeah, I'd much rather see this than some of the other ones that have come out that try to completely stand aside from Japanese visual novels and pretend like they don't exist and that they had just created the idea themselves and out of the air.
I envy you.
Next, we have a TechRaptor article. The best game music of 2020 is Persona 5 Royale, and I think that might be all they have to really say about it. It's not much of an article. It's like, yeah, we like the music in Persona 5 Royales. Okay. Thanks for telling me, TechRaptor. So here we have a game on Steam that's a bunch of Asian characters. It says it's a puzzle experimental game. To me, it looks like it's a completely text-based game for 99 cents, Chinese only. TechRaptor has an article here. Superland developers call DLC a terrible business model and announce Superland 6 inches under. Superland 6 inches under began life as DLC, but the devs have say that substantial DLC is a terrible business model, which is why the new game is a standalone effort, which is fine and all, but Superland also is not, I think, a game that managed to keep people's attention for more than a week or two. I saw some people playing it and streaming it for about a week, and I don't think anybody really remembers it now. So we got some achievements here. Some more animations and such. We haven't actually gone back and looked at this in a long time. So we've had the same flare. Feels like they changed this. Flare. So what new flares have I gotten relatively recently? I would have gotten one at some point a while ago, but or for doing the single player stuff I should have had something like, did I unlock Fate Walker? In it to win. We'll go with that. And then I don't think emblems. I don't think we've gotten any new emblems of real note. Well, actually, we probably have gotten a decent number of emblems. Because we were pretty much ending, I would say, somewhere around here, but we also have filled in some gaps. So new characters give you new emblems, but I don't know if they really mean much. There we go. And we've definitely not gotten any new characters in a long time. New character skins, you only get those basically if you pay. Haven't played as Rowan in a while.
We should head out.
Haven't played as Urias. I don't want to play as Urias though.
Light of salvation. Pop the mist.
And haven't played as Yuan in a while.
I transcend nature.
So I can move around those things for as little as that's worth. The battle pass, by the way, is like, where is the battle pass here? It's the one down below. Yeah, that's gonna be 2 days from now. The battle pass is gonna end, and I assume they're gonna throw some more battle passes at you. I would have needed to have been up to 80 really to get all the free-to-play stuff, which really goes to show how I am definitely not playing this game anywhere as much as they want me to, because I didn't even make it up to 63. And if I was to buy everything, buy the battle pass and get all these rewards, I'd get a bunch of packets and a skin and a card back, and that's about it. A lot of gold. Alright, let's just finish the last bit of news here. Bungie triples the rewards for community dawning spirit quests to stop community failing. Okay. So apparently either the community is intentionally failing or just failing regardless. Gamatsu has an article here. Yi 6, the Ark of Napistim, I don't know how you'd pronounce that, is coming to iOS and Android in 2021 in Japan. So another Ys game of the long-running Ys series. Here we have a game on Steam called Dash Dash World, which looks like a VR game where you're racing, which I'm not sure that really would work. While that one's loading, we'll look at this other game called Dragon's Tower, which obviously looks like nothing of any interest, for 99 cents English only. So we'll close that, and then we'll go back this way to Dash Dash World. It does look nicely visually polished, but you almost certainly would have to have that if you're going to be in VR. It's early access and it requires VR. It's $24.99. It has a third-party UI and it's English only. Despite some major flaws here, it does look visually polished enough that I want to see at least the reception for it before I remove it. That price tag is certainly high, though. Here we've gone to the full extreme now. We have a game on Steam called Hunting for Trump, which is literally a gun aiming a bullet at President Trump and it is just a low effort horror asset flip game for 66 cents. Bunch of languages claiming to support all of them in full audio. Every single language full audio. You'd think that Trump would set off some red flags. A thumbnail with a gun shooting a bullet at the President of the United States would set off some red flags, regardless of your politics. This is just a terrible precedent to set, and this once again shows how Steam really cannot be that crazy libertarian free marketplace that it thinks it wants to be, because if you do that, you're going to get more of this, and it's going to be a race to the bottom. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Star Citizen reports record income for 2020, 60% above the 2019 high. Okay. So, a bunch of money being made through Star Citizen. Here we have a game on Steam that's all Asian titles, which is not a terribly looking RPG Maker game. I kind of like this art style, although a thumbnail with this many characters for an RPG makes sense, but you're going to have to really squish the people in better so you can actually see their faces. Like they just took this image, which looks a lot better, and squished it and zoomed in. Regardless, this game it doesn't support English. It's free. It's Chinese only. Doesn't look terrible though. Let's see. Gematsu has updated Famitsu sales, which decent amount of sales, I'm sure, for a lot of Nintendo Switch games. You don't see a non-Nintendo Switch game listed until Cyberpunk 2077 for the PlayStation 4 in position 28. So that goes to show how dead the PlayStation 4 is, at least this week of Christmas. Now, it's worth mentioning that Christmas is more of a romantic holiday in Japan and not a gift-giving per se holiday. But there certainly would be Westerners on base and Westerners living in Japan that would be buying consoles too for Christmas, and there's just not a single PlayStation game listed as until the 28th position. It's crazy. Yeah, I think that's probably the first bit of admitting that PlayStation may be dead in Japan. Next, Gematsu has the Nier Automata shipments and digital sales topping 5 million, which I still have yet to get around to playing that game. Yep. Let's see. Next, we have a Gematsu article, Metroidvania style spring wire action game called Mysteria Ruins of D's. I feel like they're just trying to get me to say D's nuts here. Has been announced for Switch. Interesting that the weird naming schemes seem to be getting even crazier. Set in a steampunk world and follows the protagonist, a research team member, as she evades formidable foes in an ancient ruin to unravel a mystery. Well, it seems like there might be a game there. It's an interesting pitch, at least. Here we have a game on Steam called Pet Driver, which seems like you're literally driving pets around in a VR setting, which, while it might be a fun concept for a job, and perhaps in richer parts of the world you could make a career of driving pets around, this once again would be making a job around the concept of making a game around the concept of a job. And I don't know why you'd specifically drive a pet anywhere instead of walking a dog, or, well, you're probably not going to walk a cat. $4.99, English full audio. That you probably could make some money driving animals across the continental United States, because a lot of people don't want to fly their pets because a lot of pets die when they are left in the cargo hold of planes and exposed to cold or dangerous environments. But I don't know if there's a lot of call for that kind of business. So I wanted to point this out. The point shop now lets you upgrade your profile showcases. So they're asking you to take these points, which have no actual cash value, and you can upgrade your profile. Although in a lot of ways, I probably upgraded my profile so much that there really would be no reason why I would want to buy more or the same thing again. Like, all of these are things that I already had on my profile, so unless they're taking them away, I don't really know what the point there is. Yeah, because if we look at my profile, we've got 1,238 games owned with 678 DLC. That's a shame. But that does kind of point out that we are about halfway through all the games I'd ever want. Then you've got badge collector and achievement showcase and review showcase, and then items up for trade and item showcase and favorite groups and the salient stats. I feel like they probably would get rid of this fairly quickly. Recent activity, comments. So yeah, I don't know why. These were things you would get when you were leveling up your character by making, turning in the trading cards and making badges. Now it seems like they're abandoning the concept of getting trading cards and making badges. Slowly but surely they're working towards that. And everything associated with that will now be through the point shop. Finally, we have a game on Steam here called Rick Henderson, which looks like a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up. And yeah, it's just not my type of game. I feel like we talked about this in the last stream. Yeah, it doesn't look bad by any means. It's just not my type of game. $7.99. If I was going to play a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up, it should be a bigger one for sure also. And there's not going to be any new Humble Bundle, and there's not going to be any new things of super importance to talk about that happened on Steam. So I'm going to call it an end for this stream. We did drop a decent amount of frames today. Maybe that has just to do with Christmas more than anything. But as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.